People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, presents Nation Watch.
Hello Guyana, and welcome to another edition of Nation Watch, a production of the People's National Congress Reform for Sunday, 21st August 2022. I'm your host, Marvin Williams, and we're today continuing our conversation with Mr. Winston Jordan, former Minister of Finance, and we're talking about the out-of-control cost of living. Welcome again, Mr. Jordan, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marvin. It's good to be back.
When we last spoke, you told us that you had examined the food subsector in your analysis of the inflation, the question of inflation. You pointed out to us then that the food subsector inflation was somewhere in the region of 13%.
Mm-hmm.
We have been getting increasing reports of families not being able to enjoy 3 meals per day as they used to. And they have to settle for 2 and to arrange the timings so that the 1 meal that is missed is not as devastating in impact as it ordinarily would be. So we're getting a sense that your inflation numbers are really coming home to the pots in the kitchens of the Guyanese citizens. Would you say that Guyana is in a cost of living crisis situation? And if in fact we are, how bad do you think it is?
Well, okay, I don't know whether it's a crisis we are in. I know the situation is bad, as we know that the cost of living situation has 2 elements to it. There's an external element, as we have already agreed, in relation that was kind of capitalized by the war in Ukraine, Soviet Union, Ukraine. Of course, there were some issues with COVID that caused things like supply chain and production and so on. So that is known, and so critical staples like flour, and so on have become prey to this issue. And then, of course, there's the internal aspect. Again, maybe a little bit of COVID when the economy had been shut down and so on. But when you put it all together, relative to Guyana, that has large tracts of arable land that has been under agriculture, well known for its vegetables, its fruits, and so forth. I can understand maybe the staples that you importing, like flour and so on, having a problem. But a country that produces sugar, that should be available for everyone, that produces rice, that should be available for everyone, beans, various beans of other staples and so forth, and where these are being subjected to these massive price increases, that bear no relationship to what has been happening on the external front, then you have issues to do with policies of the government, reactions of the government to the inflation itself, and of course you have issues to do with those who produce, because in some of the prices that you are seeing, I had called this sometime last year, I believe, where in that price you have the producer taking advantage of shortages, and they themselves manipulating production to create artificial shortages so that they can rule where the price is concerned. You have all those factors, but it is important for a government, to be able to examine the situation critically, analytically, and to put forward policies to mitigate some of these negative influences that you would see.
But do you sense that the government is doing this?
I sense where we needed those critical policies, that is what is absent in the government. Remember last week I also indicated, because of this huge amounts of money that the government is putting into the economy by way of all these one-off cash grants and all that kind of thing, it is contributing to liquidity issues where the government may have to turn back and mop up that, and or the supply is not coming forth. So people got lots of money. Some people that is, got lots of money. The supply is not coming forth, and therefore price in the typical market setting has to do the clearing house. And when, for example, you have, let us take a typical example, sugar. Sugar. Look how much billions have been put into sugar. But sugar, the supply cannot come forth. All right? Now, the Gaisuku CEO is claiming that all the sugar that they produce will be sold locally. Now, I take that with a grain of salt, because I know some amongst of the story to do with the sugar arrangements. We have, even though we don't have a contractual market in the EU anymore, we do have contractual markets in the United States and some countries in CARICOM. And when you become a less than reliable supplier, especially in those markets, you could lose long term. So I feel that they're going to have to satisfy those markets, and whatever little is left, they're going to satisfy the local market. And if they're suggesting that whatever little is left is being smuggled, because this is the first time I heard sugar being smuggled to Venezuela as a reason for the shortage, all right, then you're going to have an issue where a critical input like sugar, a poor people's good like sugar, the price of it is going to balloon, all right? Because I don't even know if you still have a price control on sugar. I grew up when sugar was £2 for 13 cents. You know, £1.7, £2.13. You know, and sugar always had some kind of like a price control on it. I do not know in this setting whether Gaisuku has the wherewithal to increase prices whenever it wishes, and so on. So I don't even know what is the price of sugar right now, but I heard it's such a fantastic price that people avoid it, so to speak, which may not be a bad thing. Health-wise, you know. But if at the same time we could promote, say, honey, you know, honey as a substitute, right, for sugar. And also a nutritional program, a health program that says, look, sugar may be scarce and so on, but where before you were using X amount of sugar in your tea or in your sweeteners and so forth, that these alternatives can be used. Honey being one, some other thing being the other, and so forth. And where folks like my age and around my age and so on are concerned, it may be wise for you to not use sugar in your tea. You know, if you want to use a regular tea, you could do it without sugar, and so all these promotions to help with the mitigation of these issues. Okay, I never saw in this whole milieu one single thing coming out of the Ministry of Health, for example, to indicate, yes, there may be a shortage, it might be temporary and so on, but in relation to sugar, this is what you should be doing, you know, especially if you are of this age and so on and so forth. I have not seen those.
Well, the shortage has been denied.
Well,
but I want to ask you to do a little bit of a comparison for us.
yes.
Now, in speaking to what I would term a crisis in Guyana, in terms of the cost of living, the prices going through the roof, prices of everything going through the roof, including plantains, bora, shallot, and all these basic things.
Basic things.
And the argument has been from supporters and leaders of the People's Progressive Party that, look, there's a universal crisis. Shipping has been a problem. The price of oil has been a problem. And so we're feeling the shock down here. In the meantime, we as a country signed on to an agreement with the oil producers who were extracting our oil when a barrel of oil was at, say, $60. And since forced oil has held its own in the region of $100 a barrel. So one can argue that there is an excess in liquidity over expectations of revenues that were supposed to come in and so on.
Correct.
But there's no evidence that that excess revenue, that windfall revenue, is going to do anything to mitigate the cost of living impacts. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, in the 1980s, when the situation was a lot similar to what's happening now, with prices going out the window and so on. But the same defenders of what's happening now ignore the fact that it was the price of oil, when Guyana was a non-oil producing nation, that led to this crisis situation, that there was in fact a universal crisis because of this oil situation. And while that was so, the government of the day then put in place some agricultural measures
Yes,
to mitigate food shortages
correct.
and to empower Guyanese economically. Many Guyanese became rich as a result of farming. How do you see the two era? How do you see them matched against each other in terms of management?
Well, as opposed to say comparing the eras, right? We should. I guess you want me to compare the policies, and it comes right back to what I'm saying just now. Unless you had a comprehensive or embracing set of policies aimed at mitigating the total effects of quote unquote crisis, then you are going to have what you getting today. I mean, look at what you have in today. You wake up today, you get a one-off cash grant, right? Because we care, for example, $25,000 plus 5, and supposedly it's supposed to buy school clothes for when school reopens in a couple of weeks' time. You're giving this to a large number of people who haven't seen perhaps a meal yesterday. So the first thing they do is to go buy the bit of food and so on for sustenance over the next couple of days, right? As opposed to a week. Now compare that to the 5Bs program. The 5Bs program.
Where you just sent your child out.
Where just send your children out. You get rid of all the problems to do with school clothes, transportation, 2 meals at least, because they will get a hot meal in the morning, milk and so on, and perhaps in some places midday food, books and all these things, that uniform, all this is taken care of already in the 5Bs program. And this lasts throughout the school year. Not one time in August, throughout the school year. Okay, that's the difference in policies. Then you wake up and you say the disabled, we are going to give you a one-off grant of $100,000. To do what, I'm not sure, but I presume is to sustain them. Over what period, I don't know. Then the fisher folks, you say, okay, you lost your fishing ground. That's 8,000 plus people who've lost employment, by the way. 8,000 plus people who've lost employment. You say, okay, take 150,000. How they are coming up with these amounts? How they are coming up with these amounts, only the good Lord knows. How you give, say, sugar 250,000, fisher folks 150,000, disability grant 100,000, because we care 30,000, COVID grant 25,000. I don't know how they come up with these numbers, but it just shows the ad hocery of this whole approach. What is needed in this, I would call it temporary situation, because right now there's disequilibrium. Sometime down the road you may have an equilibrium. Perhaps it may occur at a higher level than you had before, certainly what you had in 2019. But for this disequilibrium, you have to be doing policies to bring back the economy back to equilibrium. Now, because when you do that, they may have some people who may be affected adversely. You then look at those folks to give emergency assistance. You look at those folks while you are trying to bring the economy back into equilibrium. You look at those folks that will be affected, the public servants. You're stuck on your money. You got money, because you claim you budgeted money in the budget for payment of public servants' salaries. The minister within the office of the president with responsibility for finance said that monies have been budgeted. Okay? So when you were talking about giving an interim increase to public servants for them to tide over this problem here, you're not asking the minister to go and find new monies. Those monies are already in the budget. But they are fixated on paying that money in December. So who vex lose and who vex dead right now? Because some of them ain't going to reach December to get what was supposed to them. And like I indicated to you last week, if you're not there on roll in December, you're not entitled to a back pay. Or let's put it this way, you don't get
You don't get.
Let me don't use the word entitlement, because you should be entitled
should be
to
entitled.
it, but you don't get. You understand? So it's an issue of how you implement the policies to right size the economy, and the policies to recognize that there are going to be effects of this right sizing to bring back the economy into equilibrium, and how you deal with those. Okay? You may have to deal with the fisher folks, but you can't deal with fisher folks with 150,000. It has to be a more comprehensive, medium to long term situation, including retraining and so on. But here, and retraining doesn't necessarily mean you have to get them into oil and so on. Retraining that you may have them cultivate all these not black belly, but whatever shrimp, sea bob, this, that, whatever. Have them look at more maybe
Inland cultivation.
inland cultivation, all these different things. Okay, many of them not going to go down the road, and maybe you train them to become welders, plumbers, carpenters, masons, and all these different things that you're going to need, that you claim you need for this massive transformation that is supposedly taking place in the economy, or is supposed to take place in the economy. All right? And this will give them a more prominent, a more predictable kind of income, rather than going out there and not knowing what they will get. You understand? They are attacked on two fronts. They are attacked on the Sonam front, where they can fish over there,
and the oil front.
and they're attacked on the oil front. So for them, more or less, this is a whole
Almost dead industry.
Almost
Yeah.
dead industry.
Yeah.
Okay? So you have 8,000 people who are going to be on the breadline. How do you tackle them? You don't tackle them by $100,000. You don't tackle that a viable income that they have been accustomed to for years. You don't tackle it by $100,000.
It has to be
You understand?
a
You don't
sustainable
tackle
plan.
disability by giving $100,000 grant. I know the people who are getting $100,000 grant are happy
Yes.
because they're getting something that they didn't get before.
Right.
But the unhappiness will return 2 months from now, or how many months when the $100,000 is finished. What are you doing for them? Is $100,000, say, a down payment of something that they can expect every 2 months, every 3 months, and so on. So we need a constructive safety net, right, that will assist people over time as you put policies in place to grow the economy. The main one that made it so safety nets is the NIS. Okay? You're happy to go there and say NIS is broke, and then tell somebody who caused it to be there. Meanwhile, the contributors to NIS are suffering because NIS cannot pay them relevant increases, right?
I want to come back to NIS. It's a big issue.
Okay, so I hope I have been able to put out there precisely what really needs to be done. You need a government that really understands an economy, how that economy functions, and what are the kinds of policies that to be put in place, okay, to allow the economy to grow, to allow the effects of that growth to be distributed, right? If not equally, then equitably, and so on. And that is what you're not seeing, and that is what you're having in Guyana, a so-called prolonged crisis, when we have the wherewithal, more than most, certainly in the region, to shorten the duration of this crisis.
Mr. Jordan, when Guyana's economy was in better shape, when the cost of living issue was better managed, we were heading to elections 2020.
Correct.
And the People's Progressive Party were loud in their clamor. I remember Irfan Ali shouting, screaming in the National Assembly about increase for the public servants.
Yes.
And the rate was 50% that was being touted. There was a lot of passion in this demand for a 50% increase for public servants. Now that things are as bad as they are, would 50% suffice? What rate are you looking at in terms of an increase for public servants when December comes, when it's likely that they are going to say, look, we're going to give you something retroactive to January 1?
Well, the rate I leave to the unions. I mean, the unions got to do some work. They're getting union dues every every month. So I leave that to that, and it's good that if they can negotiate anyhow. But I will think at this particular stage.
But sorry, negotiation time. There's no room now. We're in August.
Yeah, there's still room. There's still room for negotiation. I mean, if they met every day, and if there's willingness on both sides, I think they can come up with a figure for 2022, and they continue meeting in relation to say 2023 to 2025. Okay. I mean, this is what I think somewhere I was before, where I said I am not sanguine about this constitutional reform story. I'm sorry, I
think it was a David Hines program.
Right, yeah. but I think it's last week at the Koyana Boxon thing.
Okay.
And the reason why I was saying that is because all of these things are cosmetic. Because it's not as if we didn't have constitutional reform before. But what has it done for us? Okay? Beyond layering up the Constitution with even more institutions and laws and, and all these different things that really mean nothing much to us in reality. If it's not in here, and if you don't come to the table with a willingness to give and take, then all this is totally a thing for us. Whether you have a natural resource fund committee, economic committee, and all these committees that have in parliament that don't function. Similarly with wages. The government shows no inclination to meet the GPSU to negotiate. The last meeting that I have a couple days ago with the president was a meet and greet. It had nothing to do with the plight of the workers and trying to put in emergency measures for them. So if you don't have it here, then no amount of cosmetics and all these kinds of things with that thing. I am saying with the best of intentions. You don't even you meet with the unions and say, listen, we understand things a little tough and so on. Look, an interim increase is a little 10%. Okay? I'm giving you 10%. And we're going to start these negotiations next week. Okay? With a view to finalizing some agreement for 2022. And as we are there, we're going to start a 2023, 2025 multi-year agreement. And let us stop this story where we are at each other's throats, every year to finish off salary increase. Even the teachers, they used to have an agreement with the teachers for a 5-year agreement. Even there, all of that has been dismissed, disregarded,
yes,
and so forth. So it has to do with whether they have that approach. And let me tell you something that is borne out by us. All this talk about if you give them too much wages and so on, it can have inflationary effects. Yes, that is an economic theory, right? That suggests that. And it suggests that when the economy is either at full employment, near full employment, and so on. And so if you go and throw all this money in there without the production coming out and so forth, it disrupts the economy, inflation, and so on. But I have shown in our period 2015 to 2019, where we have given increases well in excess of economic growth. The average economic growth in the period 2015 to 2019 was 3.9%. Yet, the average inflation for the entire 2015-2019 period was 0.9%. And we gave increases on average about 12.5%. On average, about 12.5%. How it could happen? It didn't cause the inflationary spike that you talk about as you gave more and more wages. You have to come to a realization that wages in Guyana are abysmal. Abysmal. And part of it is the legacy of the 1980s, 1990s, and so on, where the structural adjustment programs decimated the wages of public servants and the pension of pensioners. We have to agree, and you have to come to a realization, especially in a growing economy, that you have to have some recovery in wages to a state where they become competitive with other sectors and competitive enough with the Caribbean. But I don't see that approach. The approach here is the approach post-1992, which says They got too many African Guyanese in the public service.
And the GCOM.
Like the wider GCOM, like the wider public service, right? I mean, they're not in the public service, the constitution, but the wider public service, right? You got too many African Guyanese there. And where they are governed by a public service commission or any other such laws, we know we're going to have a difficulty in throwing them out. So we're going to frustrate them out. In the meanwhile, we can create things like contracts and so on to ring fence those who are governed by the Public Service Commission, ring fence them, and we can think contractual. And we can pay those people who contracts more than those who are Public Service Commission type. So they either want to come on contract and therefore they forego their security of tenure by resigning and coming on contract, or they stay in the earn that pittance. But we're not going to be increasing those salaries to anywhere near. So you have that. So what you see now is the frustration that is continuing to take place, where there's an exodus. I don't want to use the word mass, but there's an exodus of nurses and teachers. I don't know where the teachers going. I thought the Caribbean and so on, but I thought they're getting positions in the United States and different other places. But particularly nurses who are going to UK.
Visa travel free.
Visa travel.
Coming from the UK will help.
Couple of weeks ago, Carnival Cruise, I think it was recruiting people from Ghana, and there was mass story at Marriott Hotel, and wherever they went, Linden, Essequibo, Borabis, there were huge numbers of people lining up to go on these cruises, right, and to work on these cruises. So the point is, in this massively growing economy, instead of creating employment opportunities, it seems as if we are narrowing the employment opportunities to such an extent that people want to make the exodus. Now, this particular theory is consistent with the long-term objective espoused by certain people in the PPP, that they're going to run or we can force them out. And this is generally what is happening. If you pay me the kind of wage that you're paying right now in the public sector, after a while, I may get, if I may just leave, or I will become so frustrated. Okay, I may do something and they use it as a basis of getting rid of me. And then you turn around and say, we want to import we have to import 150,000
persons to fill the labor gap.
To fill the labor gap. But my friends, while we are dallying over that, I hope the APNU MPs and so on are going to ask questions soon about how many people since August the 2nd have entered Guyana in terms of staying in Guyana. Okay, because that is a very important statistic to continue to flag. And where they have originated and from where they originated. Because as you well know, Commonwealth citizens who spend a year and over are eligible to vote. So if you have those Commonwealth citizens coming in mass numbers between August the 2nd and the 2024, 2025, when it's the next election,
they will be eligible.
You do the maths. Okay, so that is a very important area to look at, and I understand that they have made certain changes in the immigration department. Okay, they have made certain changes in the immigration department. So there again, you have to look at this thing in an all-wrong person. So they may have you looking in other areas, while these other areas that are left defenseless or without oversight. And
we're aware of some of the changes with a junior man being put in charge of a senior person at immigration and people getting moved out and moved around and so on.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
But okay, viewers, you're looking at Nation Watch, a production of the People's National Congress Reform. I'm your host, Marvin Williams. My guest is former Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan, and we're discussing the out-of-control cost of living and all that involves. Mr. Jordan, there's a common thread that runs through this suffering in this country. And that common thread is Bart Jagdeo. Back in 1999, when there was that strike, I think it was 99.
99.
Yes.
99.
There was the Armstrong report, which recommended significant increases for various categories of public service workers. That was never honored. In fact, because it wasn't honored, people took to the streets. And Jagdeo, I believe, then was at the Ministry of Finance.
He had just become
Senior Minister of Finance.
Yeah,
I
he was
think.
Senior Minister of Finance. I was thinking that he had just become president, but
No. I think he was Senior Minister of
yeah,
Finance.
he was Minister of Finance. Yeah.
And his response to the demands of the people of this country, following the report from Dr. Armstrong, was something I could never forget. 5%, not a black cent more. I don't know why his coinage was specific to black cent. And then came the value-added tax in 2007, January. The value-added tax was supposed to have been revenue neutral. It was supposed to have replaced 16 taxes. The PNCR One Guyana, in fact, there was a parliamentarian under that brand, PNCR One Guyana. I hear a lot about One Guyana these days. And Mr. Winston Murray, now deceased, pointed out to the government that this VAT cannot be revenue neutral. He had done the calculations and he showed that there will be a windfall and revenue inflow due to the advent of taxation, this VAT. And there were hundreds of millions of dollars in windfall collections. The PNCR One Guyana asked the government to take that windfall and apply it into the salaries and wages of the public servants to mitigate some crisis situations that we had. They ignored him. They ignored the recommendations of the party, and the suffering continues. Now, here we are with a similar situation and a government that is non-responsive to the call of the people, to the call of this civil society, to the call of the political parties, for them to find relevant approaches to mitigate this rising cost of living, to assist particularly those in the public sector. And all these calls have fallen on deaf ears. And again, we have the advent of Bart Jagdeo in the middle of everything as the de facto president. Is there hope, any hope at all, recognizing the historical factors and facts, that this government will do anything at all to bring relief to the people, the working people of Guyana?
Well, once you live in there must be some hope as such. And if you go back, as you rightly put out there, the history of the Armstrong Award, remember up to 1999 when Mrs. Jagan was in the presidency, we were still in an IMF program, and there was this thing called HIPIC that was come up, that was giving us a large number of assistance, and therefore in IMF program you were restricted in terms of wages and so forth. But the Guyana Public Service Union was able to show, by way of strike and maintaining that strike for a long time, that there were indeed avenues through which wages could be paid, and also that wage could be paid without violently disturbing the economic fundamentals of the economy. And of course, you know, the Armstrong Award wasn't a unanimous award. It was a 2-to-1. There was one of the commissioners who wrote a dissenting opinion, but Aubrey Armstrong and Clive Thomas, they wrote the majority decision in which they gave the public servants, I think it was 30% or 31%, and 31% I think it was, and 26.6% in 2000, 31% in 1999, 8% in 2000. As I remember, the Strong Award might have made other recommendations
Yes.
as it relates to allowances and so.
And a window for economic support.
Right.
Yeah.
But these weren't looked favorably by the government. The argument was that those were not part of the terms of reference, and therefore the government wasn't about to implement. But I think GPS2 has to learn the lesson as to how they were able to get this substantial increase. It is unfortunate that it had to be one using the kind of tactics that they use, which is, you have to go into the streets and then you have to stay there for how much days, 50 something days and so on, and then brought to the table, streaming and so on. And but the government proceeded there afterwards to weaken the GPSU in any number of ways, and that's why perhaps the GPSU is in the situation that it's in at the moment. I mean, things like customs and excise, which were critical to the strike, and the inland revenue, those were pulled out to the public service.
Yes.
The hospital was pulled out of the public service, and it became Georgetown Public Hospital
Essential
Corporation.
services.
Essential services, and the deeds registry, all these that were help prolong the strike, they were pulled out of the public service and put on autonomous agencies where you could be easily fired and where you can control who gets in and who goes out and so on. So there's one. Plus the GPS who suffered from I think critical decisions that they saw went against them. One was the check-off system where the government refused to collect the union dues at site, and the other one was the agency shop, where regardless whether you signed up with the union or not, union dues would have come out. And the court ruled against that activity, saying I can't remember what was the decision, but it had to do with freedom of association or something like that. So they've been weakened since. So I don't know whether they have the capacity to call a general strike of the kind that was happening in 1999. And I think perhaps the government knows that. But I think with time, new tactics should come up. And that is where the union has to show its maturity, and also that it still has the capacity to influence wage formation in the public sector. It's irrelevant whether Jagdeo is there or not. Whether he's there or when he's there, his views more or less might be the same, and it obviously influencing the government. And if he comes off the scene, it depends on whether who is there proceeds with a new approach, or if they adopt the same hard line. The public, as you well know, the public service has not been a favored institution of the PPP government, going way back to Jagon time when he was premier. And we all know all the different story, what happened under his premiership and so on. So we don't even have to go back over that. So, and it's unfortunate the public service, even the traditional one that we know, continues to suffer in this modern times in the way that it has suffered. I think they're going around hollering, what did Granger government do for you? Well, if the numbers speak for themselves, and we don't have to perhaps we don't have the time to do that now, but I'm sure the public servants will recognize what we had done for them, not only at the level of actual salary increases and training and scholarships and the large exposure that many of them got also, but they also got an opportunity to perform as public servants, as opposed to having some acolyte or some sycophant or some minister or somebody looking over their shoulder. They had an opportunity to perform. I don't know if they have that right now.
There is this massive promotion that has to do with housing. Mm-hmm. Guaranteed markets for cement and so on to a chosen few. As I understand it, if you're building your house, the government is committing itself to supporting you with foundation under certain conditions. I suppose one of those conditions that you buy from specific persons and so on. How relevant to the suffering of the people in this country as it relates to food is a promotion such as this. When you can't buy food, you are being asked to buy cement.
Yeah, but Marvin, it's so totally sad and it's so totally wrong. You cannot find money to pay public servants even a temporary wage increase and so on. But you can find money to put in the pockets of one or two major big businessmen of steel and cement, ostensibly saying that you're helping people to
Build homes.
build the homes or so on. But let's see even in Maslow's theory of needs, the first one you satisfy is subsistence, is the belly, right? And then you go out to things like clothing and housing and all things. If you can't survive, how you even gonna roof yourself if you can't eat?
But you're burdening a nation of people who are under difficult circumstances by giving them the impression that all will be well, we will support you here, and get people to put their already very, very scarce resources in a place that is not needed, in a place that allows them, well, not allows them, but that forces them to neglect the nutrition of their children.
Exactly, Marvin. And not only that, it continues the ad hocery. I mean, if I remember that story well, here is Ali at the expo, and then just before he either makes the announcement and then says something to the effect, "I hope my minister, something
is listening,"
or something that effectively puts the minister on the spot, or something that gives the impression that it wasn't discussed at the cabinet or what other place. But the minister is now hearing it for the first time. But you better don't say anything, kind of story. But let's even look at this story. Nobody asks the average builder, "How can we help you?" I mean, suppose you're halfway in your house. You already did the foundation.
And your columns
columns are up and so on. You are out. You are exempted from this so-called relief. And then let me see if I get this right. Who are we going to be deciding that we are going to buy this cement from?
And upon what basis?
Because Marvin, if 10 of us qualify, are we going to be given a voucher to go to some cement importer to get this cement? Or is the government going to send out tenders for cement? Tenders for cement, and then whoever wins the tender, then you will go to these people to get this cement. I mean, this thing is so, I'm telling you, it is so fraught with everything that is wrong about transparency and accountability, and everything that is wrong with concessions. Look, if you want to give a first-time potential owner, or if you want to give somebody who has to pay 1.2 million to CHMPA, and many times most of them don't have that money,
give the discount,
then give the discount there,
or under the 50%, the 50-50 deal that the APNU
or something where you're not discriminating. Because even Marvin, they didn't say how much steel you're entitled to.
No.
But if my house is smaller or bigger than yours, I have to get more steel than you. So I am getting a bigger concession than you.
There's no equality there.
There's no equality. There's no anything in this thing. And then, of course, the priority. You're placing priority in housing over food at this time. At this time.
That's my contention.
When studies have been done, not only, I don't know about Guyana, but Caribbean studies have been done to show that people in Guyana, where food is supposed to be plentiful, people have to skip meals. And in some places, they are going without a meal.
Just so they could build that house.
They don't build a house just so they could give something to their children.
Well, that too.
Just so that they could give something to children. I can tell you my experience during the 60s race riots. We had that problem. My father will go out early morning, 2 a.m. and line up and come home hungry. Nothing. He doesn't get into the union thing, nothing. Hungry. And we go hungry whole day. Whole day. And then he'll get up 2 a.m. the next day after drinking water and go again to see if he could get some food to bring home for us. You know, I can tell you this story because I know one day I walking, as a little boy walking in Sanibab Street, and there was a whole donkey cart, horse-drawn cart passing with BG plantain, those big plantain. And all these hungry people looking at this plantain. And, you know, they went and snatch. And from some of the plantain fell off the bunch, fell on the road. And my brother and I, we picked it up and ran straight home. Ran straight home with it. We used to live in Kitty, Station Street, Kitty at the time. Ran straight home, kite home. My mother, of course, where you get this plantain from and so on and thing. And we tell her everything. And she put it in water. We had salt. Salt was scarce. Because I think we used to get salt from Cuba or something, and salt was scarce. And she just washed them, put them in the pot and boil it with the skin. With the skin. With the skin. And we had a meal after 2 days. And when that could not continue anymore, we used to get to go and line up at St. Sidwell School in David Street. Get up 2 a.m. in the morning and go there, because by the time you reach there, the gate is locked. And by the time you reach there, you got a whole set of people already lined up.
What year is this?
This is 63 or 64. Right? So I understand what it means when to go without one meal a day. And you're telling people, we got thousands of those people in this country. And you're telling them about giving them concrete. Instead of trying to put in place safety nets that will ensure that these people live to see another. Until this crisis is over, when you could be looking at other concessions, like how we can help in housing, look today, read today's papers, the agro business people complaining bitterly that the government don't understand them. Today's paper, Starbuck News, you could read it. Agro business, they say the government is not listening to them. And this is food we're talking about, agro business, food that we're talking about. And they say the government is not listening to them. The government doesn't understand what their needs are, and the government is not proceeding. But yesterday you're talking 25 by 25. This slogan here of 25 by 25 and all kind of thing. You bring black belly sheep that now the Barbarians are saying the black belly sheep are duds. You know, they themselves, the Barbarians saying that we don't crossbreed. We don't crossbreed.
Improve
this kind of story. I mean, help us here, Lord.
Indeed. Now, in the 5 or 6 minutes remaining, Mr. Jordan, I want to get from you something relating to the National Insurance Scheme. This is the only safety net that we have in this country.
Yes.
For poor people. The NIS kicks in when you lose income due to illness, maternity, old age, invalidity, accidents, and so on, or death. At the moment, the NIS is suffering from a very, very serious problem where its contributions revenue cannot meet the demands for benefits. They pay out more in benefits than they collect in contributions. At the moment, Ms. Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, is addressing the National Insurance Barbados,
yes,
which has not very different circumstances facing it. In Guyana, no effort is being made to treat with the NIS problem, the only safety net. What do you see as the solutions to this NIS situation in relation to it as a safety net for our working class people?
Yeah, well, Marvin, this shows the difference between leadership and what in Guyanese parlance is called pamposetting, right? We got people here pamposetting. In Barbados, you have leadership, and I've given several instances where recommendations that I've made, where others have made, Like Barbados have people tuned in to Guyana, listening to us, and they're implementing. Here is as if these people are out to spite us, you know, and so on. Look where NIS is a function of several things. One, several actuarial reports which have not been implemented in whole or in substantial part, largely by the PPP government and somewhat by our government, because the actuarial report came in under the coalition government, and some of the recommendations, A, could not be implemented immediately, and B, in any case, would have had to have widespread consultation. You know, things like raising the age to 60 and and then 65 for the collection and so on. I mean, we are not Barbados, you know, the
life expectancy
is
different.
It's far lower than in Barbados,
and it's likely
right?
to get worse.
And likely to get worse, you understand? And then raising the marginal rates. If the private sector took all this long time to pay a little measly 60,000 to move from 44 to 60,000, what will be the reaction when you start telling them you have to pay? Employer marginal rates will go up by so and so amount. You got big pushback where that's a concern. And since you have a position that already says that they're not about to support you in anything except the border issues, then you can imagine it's like tantamount that you can't implement a change in the constitution because you need the opposition support and so on. And then of course what the PPP did to the NIS. You know, the PPP invested monies in the Berbice Bridge. We all know the story. We only have 5 minutes. We need to go through that. NIS is suffering. CLICO, the PPP invested monies in CLICO. We all know the story. You don't need to go through that. Right? $6 billion. And notwithstanding even a parliamentary resolution to repay CLICO their money that they lost.
Took Winston Jordan.
Through no fault of CLICO. Yeah. A government who forced them to go and invest those money. They refused to think. It's as if it gone right back to the 70s when the scheme started, 1969 when the scheme started, that the PPP did not support the scheme and wanted the scheme to fail. So it's as if now they come back again and want this scheme to fail, notwithstanding all the benefits that it has got. Yes, it took the coalition government. Jordan don't like take the praises. It's Anna Jordan, yes, but it's coalition government that implemented the recommendations of the parliament, the resolution in parliament. And that is how NIS is able to keep its head slightly above water, but it's going to drown. It's going to drown with more and more people demanding more and more resources from NIS. Now, I also, under my stewardship, very early, I went and got some technical assistance from the IDB to revamp the whole scheme. You see, Barbados is saying the same thing, that the laws under which the NIS in Barbados is operating, they're 50 plus years old. Same thing here. The laws have remained more or less the same. I addressed NIS on 2 times or 3 occasions in which I laid out my whole vision for the NIS. And part of it is that this whole scheme needs to be revamped to bring it into modernity. Let's give you a simple one. Imagine NIS got to go through a long court process to get recalcitrant people who have taken out monies legally from workers and illegally held on to it and use it for other purposes. And you got to go through a long court process to get these people. Whereas under the GRA, we put into the GRA law under my, I think, garnishing. Commissioner General don't need the court to garnish your income once it is shown that they have taxes. They don't need the court. And I was trying to get them to change the law to put that into the NIS. Because for them to have to go through the court system and so on, it is causing a strain on NIS. And then by the time you go through the court system, that company is broke. That company is gone. That company is folded up. and so forth.
There are many
you know.
such.
You know,
More than 100 million worth of contribution has been lost.
but in the meanwhile, discussions were taking place in the coalition to have the Natural Resource Fund assist the NIS, because we recognize that the strain that some of those recommendations will put on the average person, because the marginal rate will have to go up for the employee and the employer, and that will put some stress on this little bit of salary that they have. But we were able to remove the tax,
right,
income tax
on
for the contribution made by the employee, right? So Volder Lawrence, a couple months ago, had come out and put out there what the coalition had in mind. That a sum of money annually should be taken from the Natural Resource Fund and given to the NIS. And this should be done in perpetuity until the NIS can stand on its feet, until there's an investment regime in NIS that will allow them to have a comfortable return, because most of their money is put into treasury bills, okay? And the return on treasury bills is marginal, marginal, right? It's very marginal. They have to keep their money in safe assets. But when you look at schemes that came after the NIS, Guyana, and that we helped, like Trinidad and Barbados, those schemes came after us. Those schemes now are involving all kinds of things. They're involving condominiums, right? They own, the scheme owns condominiums which they rent and all this kind of thing. Now, involuntarily, this NIS had been forced into it by when CLICO's headquarters in Town Street was given to GRA. But GRA, as you well know, is looking to build its own headquarters. And it's anybody's guess who is going to want to go there when they leave, because the building is structurally deficient. It's structurally deficient, and you have to put a lot into it or knock it down, and whatever the case may be. So NIS is a matter of priority, a matter of urgency, that NIS be given a subsidy. And you're not even talking the subsidy that was being given to Gaisuco, the nearly $100 billion subsidy that is being given to Gaisuco. We're not even asking for that. But if NIS could get on average $2.5 to $3 billion over the next 5 years, that will give them $15 billion. $15 billion. And if they are given even a subsidy of $1.5 billion for the next 20 years thereafterwards, while they are strengthening their laws to make certain that those who must pay and pay the correct amount, and while they benefit from all this large increase in the economy, in the sector, and the tourism section, all the different things that those people will pay. In Barbados, you could see they are saying vendors and everybody else must pay.
The law in Guyana applies equally to vendors. Mr. Jordan, I want to thank you very much for being with us here on Nation Watch today. As always, it has been an honor and a pleasure having you. And I'm sure that our viewers are very, very happy and better informed. I thank you very much, viewers, for joining us and for staying with us. And I ask you to join us again next Sunday for more of